Wish to understand the gift of holding people accountable. My name is Amy Ballantyne. Welcome to Power to the People Pleasers. So excited to have my guest here, Mitch Gray, joining us.
Hey, Amy, great to be here with you. And let's dig in, right? It's going to be
Yeah.
good.
Yes. So we're talking about holding people accountable, but as you know, this is Power to the People Pleasers. And so as a recovering people pleaser myself, I love to know that I'm not alone, help others realize they're not alone. Have you ever been a people pleaser and how did that show up in your life if yes?
Yeah, I almost want to rephrase that as have I ever not been a
Ah,
people pleaser, right? It's like we're here because we're here. And so yeah, it's an interesting life, right? I'm sorry, I'm kind of slow to respond just because I'm thinking of all of the moments, and maybe your listeners are, kind of in their minds playing all the moments, kind of this, as John Acuff so eloquently puts, the soundtracks of our minds. Yeah, and I can reflect back on so many times in life that really, at the end of the day, were probably self-sabotaging through the guise of people pleasing. Some of those moments were very serious moments. Some of them were just kind of lighthearted moments. Even in raising kids, you have moments when you're raising kids that it's like, I probably shouldn't have done that way, but I did it just to appease them,
yep.
and not given myself. So, yeah, I remember one of the very first times that I kind of was able to reflect genuinely and with intention and kind of identify, because I think a lot of times, and you see this often in addiction programs, is we often don't know we're addicted until we're addicted. Call it denial, call it self-discovery, whatever it is. The fact of the matter is we're so busy living in the forest that we don't realize we're jumping off the cliff. And
Mhm.
one of the first times in life as a young adult, I was actually managing and moved up in leadership and was running a multi-million dollar store. And I just had these moments that other people basically were telling me that I wasn't living my authentic self,
Hmm.
but I didn't really understand how to listen to that. And so it looked like things like district manager would come visit and employees would tell district manager certain things about Mitch. And district manager would come back to Mitch and say, "Hey, Mitch, so and so says that you really haven't put the time into them that they would like, or they asked you for time off and you were kind of a jerk about it, or whatever." And it's like all the echoes of not wanting to deal with stuff because you're so busy worrying about what other people are thinking, saying, doing, etc. And then I also remember in my life at that time, just even in my relationship, with my wife at the time, it was like really trying to live both worlds of moving up the ladder, being a leader, leading a business of decent size, and also balancing the mythical thing that we always try and figure, the balance of life, right?
Yeah.
Trying to balance the needs of a relationship. And looking back, it's like, yeah, I probably didn't do that great of a job. But what I really didn't do a good job at because of people pleasing is setting boundaries.
Hmm.
And it's the idea of setting boundaries in a relationship of like, hey, this is my job. This is what I'm passionate about doing right now. This is what it's going to look like. Here's what our relationship can look like inside of that. And so I just kind of conjugate a few opportunities and events and engagements in my life early in my adulthood, in my early to mid 20s, where it's like, man, I really wish I could go back and understand the power of boundaries a little bit more and understand more about my self awareness to really kind of have some vision and foresight and go, oh my gosh, this is what people are saying, this is what's echoing, this is what my family is saying, but really that's happening because I'm not setting the boundaries that need to be set. And let's be honest, Amy, I'm still not terribly amazing at setting some of those boundaries. I'm learning, but
We're learning.
kind of to that point, 25, 26 years later, it's still a process, right? I don't know that we ever outrun this part of our DNA, but what we can do is empower the lessons that we learn from this part of our DNA. And I think
Mhm.
that's really where the magic can lie. So that was a
Mhm.
long way of saying, yes, there are these things that happen in life, but really being aware of them and going, okay, I can still learn from that story.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And when we were preparing for this conversation, you shared a little bit about how at the time back when you were managing, one of your big lessons was holding people accountable.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about that time in your life? And, that's what we're here today. We're talking about why it is a gift to hold people accountable, how it's helpful. So can you share that story, please?
Yeah, when we think about the nature of accountability, when it's done in a way that's empowering, it really truly is empowering.
Mhm.
And we all need accountability, whether we're taking on a new diet or we're starting a new job or we're raising a family. There has to be those built-in mechanisms of accountability. And I learned really early on. I had a few in particular. In fact, I'll share. I think this is a different story than I shared when we had our conversation, but very along the same lines. I'll never forget. When I took over that store, I had never hired or recruited anyone. I had never run a business, and just kind of had some raw leadership abilities that this company noticed in me and felt like they could kind of nurture those as we moved along. But I stepped into this situation that needed major overhaul. The problem with being a people pleaser and needing to do a major overhaul in a business is it usually means you've got to make some pretty major changes with people. That was an incredibly jagged pill for me to swallow because probably the foundation of my people pleasing is I just don't like hurting people. I don't like seeing people hurt, and I don't like being the motivator for that hurt, pain, etc. And so, the first couple of months, first year, I did the best I could to just get rid of people as fast as I could. I think I ran a team of 12 to 20 on a normal basis. I think after my first year, I handed out like over 150 tax forms, which is an insane amount for a team that small.
Mhm.
But I had a guy that I hired one time, and he shopped with us. It was a high fashion retail store. He shopped with us quite a bit. Nice guy, great smile, pretty good presence. And I thought, man, I just need some really good people. Whether he can sell or not, I don't really care at this point. I just need good vibes and good energy. And about 2 months in, this guy, I'm not kidding you, Amy, he was the best gene folder I ever had in my life. He could fold jeans. But the reason he was so good at folding jeans is A, he was detail oriented, and B, he did not like selling at all, did not enjoy it. And so I'm sitting there going, okay, I have to make a change with this guy. Let's call him, James. I have to make a change with James. I don't have an option. It's unfair to him. It's unfair to me. It's unfair to the customer. It's unfair to the team. But such a nice guy, such a great gene folder, would do anything you asked of him. At that point in my career, I'm about 2 to 3 years in, I had developed the culture enough that people were kind of firing themselves, which is a whole nother episode we could discuss in a strategy. We don't have time to dig into it today. But what I learned is through this art of accountability through empowerment, I incidentally, at the time, to be honest, I incidentally ran onto this idea of creating a culture where people recognize really quickly if they're going to fit or not.
Mhm.
So back to James. I'm a couple of years into management. I had kind of figured out this whole managing, building a team thing. And I walk up to James one day and I'm like, look, man, can we have a conversation? And he's like, yeah. And I could just tell something wasn't right. He's like, hey, how you doing? How you feeling about the job? And he's all, Mitch, I hate it. I hate it. I'm like, what do you mean? And he goes, I absolutely hate selling. And that's what we're here to do. We're not here to fold jeans all day. I'm like, yeah, you're right. So what do you think we should do? He's like, well, I can't work here anymore, man. But I don't know. I really like you. I like working for you. I'm like, look, man, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to help you find another job. We're going to move you on to something. And so I called a buddy that had like a welding business. And this guy, by the way, this guy went on to start his own construction company. He's doing incredibly well now. He's built this, kind of small empire in the construction world. And so, what I learned in that moment specifically about being a people pleaser, but also understanding accountability, is A, none of us are stupid. Most of us have enough awareness to know when we fit and when we don't. B, we often just need someone to hold the mirror up
Yeah.
and honestly ask, Amy, are you comfortable in this moment? Is everything okay? And when we've provided a safe space for people to give an honest response, They normally know the answer. I think we all deep down know the answer. It's just that it's really difficult sometimes to face the truth. And as people pleasers, that's it. I was thinking this morning, I was like, man, I really hate quitting things.
Yeah.
Whether it's letting a relationship move on for another season, whether it's a job, whether it's a project. But why do I not like quitting things? It's not because I didn't do a good job. It's not because I didn't give my best. It's because I just have a hard time letting go. Why do I have a hard time letting go? Because I feel like I let myself and others down.
Mm.
And so when I learned the art of just simply holding the mirror up and letting that be the accountability, that takes the burden off of me and simply gives power to the story at hand. Now we have to be careful because the balancing act is not using that as a cop out of
Yeah.
playing my role as a leader, as a motivator, inspirer, instigator of greatness. But what it also does is as a people pleaser, it allows me to go, look, it's really not my responsibility how you live your life.
Mhm.
It's just not. It's my responsibility to show up. And if I can just focus on showing up, normally everything else takes care of itself. And so James taught me a big lesson. And that lesson was just ask the question, are things okay? Are you comfortable? And if not, how can I support you moving out? By the way, as a people pleaser, what I learned is when I hired right and it just wasn't a fit, I helped people find jobs instead of fire them. And that was so good for me because I felt so much better about that situation. What's crazy is over the last 20 years, how many people have contacted me and been like, man, but you're the only person that's ever done that for me. And it was really cool how you did. So I take pride in that because it matters how we treat people, right? Even
Yes.
when we need to make changes, it matters.
Yes. Yes. That's big. I love that you found them other jobs and helped be a part of the solution to, guide and mentor them forward. That's huge.
Yeah.
So awesome.
Yeah.
So you have this podcast, the Mitch Gray Show. Tell me about this.
Yeah, our mantra is bringing the art of humanity back to leadership. So we talk about things like what we just talked about. We tell stories. I have amazing guests on the show that, it's interesting, and I'm sure you've experienced this in your podcasting life, that I don't really seek out guests that have the same mindset, but they're it's you kind of just attract them. It's
Yeah.
like I don't even try, and they just show up, right? And what's even more interesting is the last year I haven't even actively booked guests. You kind of get to the point you build that momentum that people start kind of coming to you. And in fact, I've got a co-host now, Miguel Antonio, who's amazing. And the next few episodes we're going to have guests on, and really we're just about inspiring people, talking about the deeper things of life, deeper thoughts. We talk about everything from spirituality to building teams to setting culture to decision making and mindset. And so not so dissimilar to really what you're doing in the world, which
Mhm.
again, we kind of all, goodness attracts goodness and so on and so on. And so yeah, go subscribe anywhere podcasts are available. Would love to have listeners check that out.
Amazing, amazing. So, as a speaker, what is your favorite topic to share with people?
Ooh, you're gonna make me narrow it down to one topic. I guess I would say I guess I would say personal development from the standpoint of what I call the five currencies. So spirituality, financial, emotional, physical, mental. The five currencies. And somewhere in playing, I don't really talk about finances. That's not my cup of tea. But we often just view finances as the currency,
Yes.
which I would argue the most important currencies are not finance. Finance is usually the result of currency from the others. But I really love digging into the personal development side of, what are you investing in yourself? How are you growing? What questions are you asking? How are you showing up in every moment with energy, positivity, authenticity? Because, the longer I live, not that I'm an old guy, but the longer I live life, the more I realize we spend so much time in every single moment except this moment.
Mhm.
We spend so much time either hanging on to the past or worrying about tomorrow. And so I've really been on this kick the last 6 to 8 months about really inviting people into considering what would it look like in your life to just be present now, to show up
Mhm.
now. because really showing up is the battle. If we show up, things can happen. If we never show up, nothing happens. And so really focusing on that energy of showing up for here, now, and letting everything else unfold. So you could say faith. You could say faith. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you hold yourself accountable then to showing up in the present?
Yeah. So for people watching on the screen, sometimes it begins with technology. Personally, I always have my phone on Do Not Disturb. And I made that decision about a year ago. First of all, for my mental health. But second of all, that way before a meeting, before you and I jumped on here, I didn't have to worry about turning things off. If it's a 911 situation, people know to text me, hey, call me right back. I really need you in this moment. And so that leads to really focusing on the process of turning off the static because there's so much static. Whether it's checking emails or being available, that's kind of the downside to technology, right? Is it's made us incredibly available. And I have this little mental mantra I say, and that is I'm going to live like it's 1994 because my teenage years were the early 90s where we didn't have cell phones and we didn't have, my house, we didn't even have a computer until I was like a senior in high school. I didn't get online, we still took typing in high school. And so often I miss that. I miss the emptiness, not negatively, but just the space of being able to think. They show us mental emotional health data, and unfortunately, suicide ideation's on the rise, addictive behaviors on the rise, and I firmly believe it's because most of us are just looking for some empty space. We're just looking for those moments where we can shut our brain off. And I struggle with that. So for me, the accountability is I'm not available all the time. And I'm fine. It took me a couple of years to practice, like, especially with my kids, because I prided myself on being there for my kids and they're adults now. But it took me a while to be like, hey, dad's not always available. And that's a really good thing. What's great is I'm seeing them set the habits earlier than I ever did. And so we have to take courage to know that when we set those boundaries, it's actually empowering others to set boundaries as well. I set daily habits and anchors. So I go to the gym and lift weights 4 to 5 times a week. I move my body every day. I'm learning to expand my meditation sessions. I'm trying to get to where I'm doing it 3 to 4 days a week rather than just maybe once. And so it's those little things that I know I'm going to feel better after I do it, even on the days I don't want to do it. And it's just that discipline. It's saying, I'm turning it off. I'm not available. I'm going into my meditative state. I'm just going to be here for myself. We know, again, because we're smart creatures, that when we do those things, the results are really good.
Yeah.
So having the courage to take the discipline and have the accountability set. I have a few coaches that I work under, but I don't necessarily have an accountability group or whatever. I just really, when I make the decision, I'm just going to, I'm going to set my mind to it. And I think all of us have that ability and power. It's not a superpower. Just pick your routine, pick your daily anchors, set your boundaries, and set your mind to it. And have compassion when you don't make it.
Yes.
Have compassion. Yeah.
And so you're sharing that you're a very, very disciplined person, that you have that strength already mastered.
Yeah.
For those people who are on that journey, you kind of mentioned the group or the accountability person. Are there any downfalls to having that accountability person, or is that something you recommend to people at the beginning of their journey to discipline?
Know yourself. What's the old saying? Know thyself. That's the key. For me, having a therapist or a business coach or a physical trainer coach is very advantageous. I don't necessarily need an accountability group or I go to the gym by myself. But there are others that it's like, hey, I need this extra motivation. Awesome. Do it. It's not right or wrong. It's know yourself. So that's the first key. The second key is start small.
Yeah.
Start with something very small. If it's like, okay, I really want to change my diet. Well, then start with one thing. Maybe add some fresh vegetables once a week and just start there. Maybe add, if you drink a lot of soda, maybe take out one soda a week, whatever it is. if you try and, as Dave Ramsey, the financial guy, says, if you try and eat the whole elephant at once, you can't. It's just a bite at a time. And so it's that same idea of how can you start small? Maybe it is inviting a group. If you want to start being physically active, walk 5 minutes 3 times a week. Do it during your lunch break and ask a coworker to go with you. You'll have great conversation. It'll be enjoyable, whatever that looks like for you. And I think that's the biggest piece. And so I would even start with the idea of take inventory of yourself. Get a notebook out. I'm old school. Get a notebook, get a pen, be honest with yourself, and just take inventory and write down, okay, here's my goal. What do I truly need? Do I need the accountability partner? Do I need to join a group online? If I'm going to read 15 books this year, do I need to join a reading circle on LinkedIn or whatever? Gosh, the world is full of so much opportunity that I think it overwhelms us sometimes. And so just get your pen and paper, take inventory, be honest with yourself, and maybe ask if you have a best friend, ask them to take inventory. Hey, here's what I'm thinking about doing. You know me well. If I take this endeavor on, am I set up for success here? And hopefully your best friend can positively say, yes, here's why, or no, have you thought about X, Y, and Z? And you see that with people, especially on diets. I want to lose 30 pounds. I'm going to change my whole diet. And so in those moments, it's like, well, let's back up a little bit. It's really a behavior. What I like to say is persistence over time. That's how you build discipline. Discipline isn't decided overnight. It's persistent over time because you really need those wins. Yeah.
Love that. I love that. And you just reminded me of a moment I had yesterday with an individual who said, and it was around accountability, actually. I asked her if she had someone who can hold her accountable to the life that she wanted to have and some of the challenges she wanted to work through. And she shared that she had one person who is her best friend who wouldn't actually tell her the truth, who would just be like agreeable and say, oh, yeah, you're doing great. And supportive and encouraging. And then she had another friend who definitely could hold her accountable, but she almost was afraid to call her because the way the person was delivering accountability was like harsh and over the top. So I think there's a beautiful place to land here and to wrap this up, to remind people that there is a gift in holding people accountable if they're asking us to
Yeah.
be compassionate, to be empathetic, to provide that space for them. Um, in a way that we would want to be treated if we were asking for that accountability as well. And that
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you brought that around.
Yeah. And the $64 million question there is, how do you want to be treated?
Yes, and held
And
accountable.
that's the question that most people don't dive into. I mean, really, and when I'm doing leadership coaching with business leaders, one of the first questions I ask is, how do you want to be communicated with? And have you asked that question of your team? And you can apply that to parental relationships, marriage relationships, business, whatever that looks like. And so in that scenario, to me, it's like, number one, are you clear on how you want to be communicated with? And number two, are you clear on how you're going to teach others to communicate with you? And that's something we miss out on. And it is scary. I mean, it really is, to take inventory of yourself, first of all, and then go, hey, Amy, I really need an accountability coach. Here's how I prefer to be communicated with. Is that something you can do?
Yeah.
But those are the questions. And if you could just narrow it down to that, that's such a huge starting point. And it's really magical.
Yeah. So awesome. What a great conversation, Mitch. It was so wonderful to have you today. Thank you for
Yeah.
being here.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
Awesome. And so to connect with Mitch, his podcast is The Mitch Gray Show, mitchgraymedia.com, or on Instagram, mgraymedia. So connect with him there. Thank you again, Mitch. It was great to have you.
Thank you.
And to all of our listeners, it was so wonderful to have you listening in again to Power to the People Pleasers. My name is Amy Ballantyne. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode coming soon.